The wedding was beautiful. Everyone said so. The flowers came from 3 different planets. The music played soft and sweet. Over 2,000 guests filled the great hall of House Talon, their silver skin shining under the crystal lights. Lady Yura stood at the altar in her mother's wedding dress. The white silk flowed like water around her feet. Her violet eyes were calm, but inside her chest, anger burned like fire. She was being sold. That was the truth of it. Her father needed money. Her house needed power. And so she would marry a human, a species the Valari had looked down upon for centuries. When her father first told her, she had thrown a vase at his head. Humans were small. Humans were weak. Humans had only joined the Galactic Federation 300 years ago. They were children compared to the ancient Valori Empire, but her father had simply dodged the vase and explained the situation. The peace treaty required a marriage between their species. House Talon had been chosen. Yura would do her duty, and so here she stood, waiting for her human husband. The doors opened. The crowd turned to look. Yura's heart sank. The man walking toward her was ordinary. That was the only word for him. He was not tall. He was not short. His black hair was neat but simple. He wore plain gray clothes instead of military uniform or noble robes. He walked with small steps, his head slightly bowed, like a servant afraid to be noticed. His name was Kan Dawn. He worked as a cultural liaison for the Federation's diplomatic corps. A paper pusher. A nobody. Whispers spread through the crowd like poison. This is their offering? An insult to House Talon. The humans mock us. Yura kept her face still as stone. She would not show weakness. She would not show anger. She was a daughter of House Talon, and she would bear this shame with dignity. Dawn reached the altar. He looked up at her for the first time. His eyes were dark brown, soft and warm. He smiled a small, gentle smile and bowed deeply. Too deeply. It was the bow of a servant, not a husband. Lady Yura, he said. His voice was quiet. I am honored. She said nothing. The ceremony began. The first month of marriage was strange. Yura expected many things from her new husband. She expected him to try to claim power in her household. She expected him to make demands. She expected him to act like a man who had married above his station. Instead, Daohan did none of these things. He woke early each morning and disappeared for 2 hours. When he returned, he would help the kitchen staff prepare breakfast. He spent his afternoons in the garden, planting flowers and pulling weeds. In the evenings, he read books in the library, always sitting in the smallest chair. He never raised his voice. He never complained. When servants mocked him behind his back, he pretended not to hear. When nobles visited and treated him like furniture, he simply smiled and poured their tea. Yura watched him with growing confusion. What are you doing? She asked him one evening. They were eating dinner alone as they did most nights. The dining room was too big for 2 people. Their voices echoed off the walls. Dahan looked up from his soup. Eating, my lady. I mean here. In this house. In this marriage. What is your plan? He tilted his head, thinking. I have no plan. I am simply trying to be useful. Useful. Yura set down her spoon. You are the husband of a Valori noble. You should be building alliances, gaining power, making your species proud. Daohan smiled that small, gentle smile. I am happy in the garden. She stared at him. She could not understand this man at all. But then she began to notice things. Small things. Strange things. The servants who had mocked Daohan grew quiet around him. They still did not respect him, but they had stopped laughing. Something in their eyes had changed. Her personal guard, Captain Mohan, was a veteran of 40 campaigns. He had killed more enemies than he could count. He feared nothing and no one. But after one short conversation with Dohan in the garden, Captain Mohan began treating the human differently. He nodded when they passed in the hallway. He stood straighter in Dohan's presence. Once, Yura saw him bow just slightly, just for a moment when Dohan walked by. When she asked Captain Mohan about it, he only said, "The human and I understand each other, my lady." That was not an answer, but she could get nothing more from him. Then came the banquet. It was a small gathering, only 50 guests, to celebrate some minor treaty. Yura sat at the high table with her father. Dohan sat at a lower table, alone, eating quietly. Lord Kyung was drunk. He was always drunk. He was also cruel, and he had never liked humans. "Look at him," Lord Kyung announced loudly, pointing at Dohan. "The great human husband. He looks like a mouse." Some guests laughed. Others looked away. Embarrassed, Dohan continued eating. Lord Kyung stood up, knocking over his wine. He pulled his ceremonial sword from his belt and walked toward Dohan's table. "Perhaps I should teach him to squeak like a mouse," Lord Kyung said. "Perhaps I should cut off his little mouse ears." Yura started to rise. Her father grabbed her arm, holding her in place. "Do not interfere," he whispered. "The human must learn his place." Lord Kyung raised his sword, and then Yura almost missed it. It happened so fast. Less than a heartbeat. Dohan looked up. His eyes changed. Something moved behind them, something old and cold and terrible. For one instant, he was not a gentle gardener. He was something else entirely. Lord Kyung froze. His sword stopped in midair. His face went white. His hands began to shake. The sword clattered to the floor. Lord Kyung turned and walked away. He did not run, but only because his legs would not move fast enough. He left the banquet hall. He left the estate. He would not return for 3 months. Dohan picked up his spoon and continued eating. Yura stared at her husband. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were cold. What had she just seen? What was this man? After the banquet, Yura could not sleep. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, seeing that moment again and again. The way Dohan's eyes had changed. The way Lord Kyung had frozen like a rabbit before a wolf. The way everything had shifted in less than a second. She had grown up among warriors. She knew what danger looked like. And in that moment, her quiet, gentle husband had been the most dangerous thing in the room. The next morning, she began watching him. She woke before dawn and waited by her window. As the first light touched the sky, she saw Dohan leave through the garden gate. He walked into the forest behind the estate and disappeared. 2 hours later, he returned. His clothes were slightly wet with sweat. His breathing was normal. He went to the kitchen and began making breakfast. Yura studied his hands as he cooked. She had never really looked at them before. Now she noticed things. His fingers were covered with small scars, old and white, nearly invisible. His palms had thick calluses, not from gardening tools, but from something else. Something harder. These were not the hands of a diplomat. A week later, a human military ship arrived at the estate. Commander Beek Jizyok had come to discuss trade agreements with Yura's father. He was a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes. He carried himself like a soldier. When Commander Beek saw Dohan, something strange happened. The commander stopped walking. His back straightened. His chin lifted. For a moment, he looked like a young soldier standing before a general. "Sir," Commander Beek said softly. Dohan shook his head once. A tiny movement. A warning. Commander Beek's face became normal again. "Mr. Kang, good to see you." But Yura had seen it. She had seen everything. That evening, she followed Commander Beek into the garden. He was smoking a cigarette by the fountain, looking up at the stars. "You know my husband," Yura said. It was not a question. Commander Beek turned slowly. He studied her face for a long moment. "I know many people, my lady." You called him, sir. You stood at attention. You are a commander, and you treated him like he was your superior. The commander said nothing. Who is he? Yura stepped closer. Who is Kang Doan, really? Commander Beak finished his cigarette. He dropped it and crushed it under his boot. When he looked at her, his eyes were careful. Some questions are dangerous to ask, my lady. Some answers are dangerous to know. He walked away. Yura's hands were shaking. But she was a daughter of House Talon. She did not give up easily. That night, she used her family's access codes to enter the Federation's restricted databases. She typed her husband's name into the search system. The screen flickered. Access denied. Classification level Omega. Authorization required from Galactic High Command. Omega classification. The highest level. Even her father, a lord of the Velori Empire, did not have clearance for Omega files. What could a simple cultural liaison have done to earn such secrecy? 3 weeks later, Yura got her answer. The peace negotiations were being held on Space Station Vera, a neutral meeting place between Velori and human space. Yura and Doan attended as representatives of their marriage alliance. They sat in a small conference room with 12 other diplomats and nobles. The attack came without warning. The lights went out. Explosions shook the station. Emergency alarms screamed through the corridors. A voice announced over the speakers, "This station now belongs to the Liberation Front. All Federation species will pay for their crimes." The Liberation Front. Yura knew that name. They were terrorist survivors of species that had lost wars against the Federation. They hated everyone, but they especially hated humans. The conference room doors sealed shut. They were trapped. "Stay calm," said one of the Velori nobles. "Security will come." But security did not come. Instead, the door exploded inward. 3 attackers stood in the opening. They wore black armor and carried plasma rifles. Their faces were hidden behind masks. They moved into the room with practiced speed. "Everyone on the ground." One of them shouted, "Now." The diplomats dropped to the floor. Some were crying. Some were praying. Yura reached for her ceremonial knife. She was Velori, and she would not die without a fight. But before she could move, Doan stepped forward. He walked toward the 3 attackers like he was taking a walk in his garden. Slow, calm, relaxed. "Sir, get down." One of the diplomats screamed. Dohan did not get down. The first attacker raised his rifle. What happened next took 11 seconds. Yura counted them later when she replayed the moment in her mind. 11 seconds that changed everything. Dohan moved. Not like a man, like water, like wind, like something that had no bones or limits. He flowed around the first attacker's rifle and struck 3 times. The attacker fell, his neck broken. The second attacker fired. The plasma bolt missed by inches. Dohan was already beside him, taking his rifle, using it as a club. The attacker crumpled. The third attacker tried to run. Dohan caught him in 2 steps. 1 blow to the throat. 1 blow to the spine. The attacker dropped. 11 seconds. 3 dead enemies. Dohan stood among the bodies. He was not breathing hard. His hands were steady. There was no expression on his face, just calm, cold focus. Then he turned. His eyes met Yura's, and in that moment, she saw him. The real him. The thing he had been hiding behind gentle smiles and garden work. It was old. It was terrible. It had seen more death than she could imagine. Then, like a curtain falling, the mask returned. He was just Dohan again, small, soft, quiet. "Please," he said. His voice was almost a whisper. "Please don't tell anyone." Yura stared at her husband. Her heart was pounding so hard it hurt. "Who are you?" She breathed. Dohan looked at the bodies at his feet. He looked at his hands, those scarred, calloused hands that she had studied so carefully. "I was hoping," he said slowly, "to leave that man behind. He has too much blood on his hands to deserve a life like this." The alarms continued to scream. The station continued to shake. But Yura heard none of it. She only heard his words, echoing in her mind. Too much blood on his hands. What kind of man said such things? What kind of man could move like that? What kind of man had Yura married? The attack on Space Station Vera made news across the galaxy. The Liberation Front had killed 47 people before Federation forces took back control. It could have been much worse. Stories spread about what happened in Conference Room 7. 12 witnesses told the same tale. A quiet human man had killed 3 terrorists in seconds, moving faster than anyone had ever seen. The Valori Pale Council demanded answers. The Pale Council ruled the Valori Empire. 7 ancient lords, each over 500 years old, sat in their great white chamber and decided the fate of billions. They were not used to mysteries. They did not like things they could not understand. Lord Talon brought Yura and Dohan before them. The chamber was cold. The 7 lords sat on high thrones, looking down at the 3 visitors like judges studying criminals. "We have seen the security recordings," said the eldest lord. His name was Sorn, and his violet eyes were hard as stone. "The human male killed 3 armed attackers in 11 seconds. Explain this." Lord Talon bowed. "My lords, I cannot explain. Not you." Lord Soren pointed at Dawn. "Him, the husband. Explain yourself." Dohan stood with his head bowed, his hands clasped before him. He looked small in this great chamber. He looked weak, but Yura knew better now. "I was defending the delegates, my lord," Dohan said quietly. "I did only what was necessary. What was necessary." Lord Soren leaned forward. "We have warriors who have trained for a century. They could not do what you did. Who taught you to fight like that?" "Silence. Answer the question, human." More silence. The doors of the chamber opened. Every head turned. Admiral No Sungwon walked in. He was the highest military commander in human space, a legend among his people. He had won a dozen wars and built the human fleet into a force that even the Valori respected. Behind him came 4 human soldiers in full combat armor. "Forgive my interruption," Admiral No said. He did not bow. "I came as soon as I heard about the attack. I needed to make sure my officer was unharmed." "Your officer?" Lord Soren's eyes narrowed. "This man is a cultural liaison, a diplomat. He serves the Federation, not your military." Admiral No smiled. It was not a nice smile. "There has been some confusion about Mr. Kang's role. I am here to clear that up. Then clear it up, now." The Admiral looked at Dawn. Something passed between them, a question, an answer. Dawn closed his eyes and nodded slightly. He looked tired. He looked sad. Admiral No turned back to the Pale Council. "I must warn you," he said. "What I am about to share is classified at the highest level. Once you know, you cannot unknow. Are you certain you wish to proceed?" Lord Soren waved his hand impatiently. "Speak." Admiral No pulled a small device from his pocket. He pressed a button and a holographic screen appeared in the air. "The man you know as Kang Doan," the Admiral said, "has many names. The Valori have called him the Shadow that Kills. The Karvex called him the End of All Things. 16 different species have called him the God of War." The screen showed records, mission reports, battle statistics, kill counts. Yura watched, her blood growing cold. Confirmed engagements, 847. Defeats, 0. The screen showed a burning planet. Then another. Then another. He ended the Karvex incursion single-handedly. He infiltrated their hive world alone. 2 billion Karvex died. The war ended in 3 days. Silence in the chamber. The lords were pale. He destroyed the dreadnought called Eternity's End during the siege of Proxima. That ship had killed 2 million humans. He boarded it with a team of 7 soldiers. He was the only survivor. But the ship was destroyed. The screen showed a massive warship breaking apart, fire blooming in the darkness of space. 16 species have officially classified him as a civilization-level threat. His presence in a star system is considered an act of war under 3 separate treaties. We had to hide his identity just so the peace negotiations could happen. Lord Soren was gripping his throne so hard his fingers had turned white. "This is impossible," he whispered. "No single being could, General Varth." An old Valori soldier stepped forward from the shadows of the chamber. He was covered in scars. His left eye was missing. He was one of the greatest warriors the Valori had ever produced. "You were at the Battle of the Red Nebula," Admiral No said. 20 years ago. Your fleet faced a single human ship." General Varth did not speak. His remaining eye was fixed on Dohan. "Tell them what happened, General." General Varth's voice was rough. "We had 12 warships, 3,000 soldiers. We cornered the human vessel near the nebula." He paused. "One man boarded our flagship. Just one. He killed everyone on board except me. He left me alive to deliver a message." "What message?" Lord Soren demanded. He said, "Tell your people to stop. This is your only warning." We stopped. The war ended that day. General Varth's voice dropped to a whisper. "I have had nightmares about him for 20 years. And now I learn he has been living in our space, eating our food, sleeping under our stars." Everyone looked at Duhan Da. He stood there, small and quiet, his head still bowed. He did not look like a god of war. He looked like a tired man carrying a heavy weight. Why? Lord Soren's voice was barely controlled. Why would humanity send their greatest weapon to marry a minor noble of a minor house? Is this a threat? An insult? Neither. Admiral No's voice softened. "We sent him because he asked to go." He asked. The Admiral looked at Dawn with something like sadness. He wanted to stop. He wanted to stop being a weapon. He wanted to learn how to be. The Admiral paused. Human again. Normal. Happy. This marriage, this quiet life, it was his reward for 50 years of service. His one request. The chamber was silent. Yura looked at her husband. This monster. This legend. This quiet man who planted flowers and made tea. She thought about all the mornings she had watched him work in the garden. All the evenings he had cooked dinner for the servants. All the times he had smiled that small, gentle smile. He had chosen this. He had chosen peace. He had chosen her. And suddenly, she understood. The god of war was tired of war. He had come here to rest, and she had been too blind to see it. 1 month passed after the truth was revealed. Everything changed. And nothing changed that the servants now bowed when Dohong walked by. The guards stood at attention. Nobles who had mocked him suddenly found reasons to be polite. The entire estate treated him like a bomb that might explode at any moment. But Doan still woke early. He still worked in the garden. He still cooked breakfast for the kitchen staff. He still smiled that small, gentle smile. Only now, Yura understood what that smile cost him. She began sitting with him in the garden. At first, she did not know what to say. How do you talk to a man who has destroyed civilizations? How do you share tea with someone who could kill you in a heartbeat? But slowly, they began to speak. Do you remember them all? Yura asked one afternoon. She was helping him plant a row of blue flowers. Her hands were covered in dirt. The people the ones who, yes. Dohan did not look up from his work. Everyone. Every face, every name I could learn. They visit me at night sometimes. That sounds terrible. It is terrible. But it is also fair. They deserve to be remembered. He finally looked at her. His dark eyes were calm but sad. I do not expect forgiveness, Lady Yura. Not from them. Not from you. I only wanted a chance to be something else before the end. The end? He smiled that tired smile. Men like me do not grow old. Something always comes. Someone always remembers. Yura did not know what to say. So she just kept planting flowers beside him. Days passed. They talked more. He told her about Earth, his home world. About the oceans that covered most of the planet. About the mountains and the forests and the cities that touched the sky. He told her about his mother, who had died when he was young. About his father, who had never forgiven him for becoming a soldier. She told him about her own life. About growing up in a dying noble house. About a mother who wanted her to be perfect. About a father who saw her as a tool to be used. About the loneliness of being a daughter instead of a son. They were both, in their own ways, prisoners of duty. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset, Yura asked, "Why did you choose this? This marriage? This place? You could have had anything. Any reward you wanted." Dohun thought for a long moment. "I saw a picture," he said finally, "in the marriage database. Your face, your eyes. You looked angry, trapped, like you were fighting against something you could not escape." Yura felt her cheeks grow warm. "That is not very romantic." It was familiar. Dohun's voice was soft. "I recognized that look. I have seen it in my own mirror for 50 years. I thought, perhaps two trapped people could help each other be free." Yura did not know what to say, but she reached out and took his hand. His fingers were rough with scars and calluses. But his touch was gentle. They sat there together until the stars came out. 2 weeks later, everything shattered. A human intelligence officer named Shin Yunji arrived at the estate. She was small and quick, with nervous eyes that never stopped moving. She came with a warning. "They found you," she said to Doan. They were in the private study, away from listening ears. "The remnant. They have united." Yura's blood went cold. She had heard of the remnant survivors of the species Dohan had destroyed. Scattered and broken, hiding in the dark corners of the galaxy. "How many?" Doan asked. His voice was calm. "Over 400 ships. 6 different species working together. Tarvek survivors. Children of the Eternity's End crew. Soldiers from every war you ever fought." Shin Yunji's hands were shaking. "They have one purpose, revenge. They are coming here. When? 3 weeks. Maybe less." Silence. Dawn nodded slowly. "Thank you for the warning. You should leave now. It is not safe here. Sir, go." Shin Yunji left. Yura and Dohan were alone. "You have to run," Yura said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Hide. The galaxy is big. They cannot find you if they will find me." Dohan's voice was gentle. "They will always find me. And if I run, they will destroy everything in their path looking for me. This planet. This system. Your people. Then what do we do?" He did not answer. He did not need to. The Pale Council met in emergency session. The 7 ancient lords were afraid Yura could see it in their eyes. They had just learned that the most dangerous being in the galaxy lived among them, and now an army was coming to kill him. Some wanted to exile Dohan, send him away and tell the remnant he was gone. Let the humans deal with their own monster. Others wanted to kill him themselves. Give his body to the remnant as a peace offering. Yura listened to them argue, her anger growing with every word. Finally, she stood. "You are cowards," she said. The chamber went silent. "Lady Yura," her father hissed. Sit down. No. She walked to the center of the chamber. This man came to us in peace. He asked only for a quiet life. He has done nothing but serve our house with honor. And now you want to throw him away because you are afraid? He is a weapon, Lord Soren said coldly. A human weapon. We owe him nothing. He is my husband. Yora's voice rang through the chamber. He is a member of House Talon. And House Talon does not abandon its own. Silence. Lord Talon stared at his daughter. His mouth opened, then closed. He did not know what to say. Why you are turned to face the Pale Council. You call yourselves warriors. You call yourselves proud. But you are afraid of one man, and now you are afraid of his enemies. She stood tall. I am not afraid. I stand with my husband. If that means I stand alone, so be it. She walked out of the chamber. Duhan was waiting outside. He had heard everything. You did not have to do that, he said quietly. I know. Your house. Your family. They will punish you. I know. Why? Yura looked at him, really looked at him. The quiet man. The gardener. The cook. The soldier. The monster. The god. Because I know who you are now, she said. Not the god of war. Not the demon from the old stories. I know the man who plants flowers. The man who cooks breakfast. The man who could burn worlds, but chooses to be kind. She stepped closer. That is who I married. That is who I will stand beside. Dohan's eyes shone with something she had never seen before. Yura, he said. It was the first time he had used her name without a title. Before she could speak, an alarm rang through the estate. The remnant fleet had arrived early. They had 3 days. Maybe less. Dawn looked at the sky, and Yura saw the change come over him. The gentle gardener disappeared. Something older and harder took his place. His eyes became cold. His body became still. The god of war was waking up. Stay here, he said. His voice was different now. Quiet, but heavy with power. I have work to do. He walked toward the military command center. Yura watched him go, and she prayed to God she was not sure existed that he would come back. The combined human Valori defense fleet numbered 112 ships. Against them came 437 vessels of the remnant, a patchwork armada held together by hatred and revenge. Every officer in the command center knew the math. They were outnumbered almost 4 to 1. Even with their best tactics, the battle would be a slaughter. Then Kang Dohan took command. The Valori admirals had argued. They did not want a human giving orders to their ships. But when Dohan looked at them, when they saw what lived behind his eyes, the argument stopped. Formation Delta 7, Dohan said. His voice was calm, quiet, terrible. Move the destroyers to the following coordinates. Cruisers will hold position at the nebula's edge. Do not engage until I give the order. The admirals obeyed. There was nothing else to do. For 3 hours, Dohan stood at the tactical display. He did not eat. He did not drink. He barely moved. His eyes traced patterns in the remnant fleet that no one else could see. When the remnant attacked, he was ready. The battle was not close. Dohan did not fight with rage or passion. He fought with cold, perfect precision. Every order he gave was exactly right. Every movement of his fleet answered a remnant attack before it happened. He knew them. He knew how they would think. He knew what they would do, because he had fought their fathers and mothers. He had studied their tactics for 50 years. And he remembered everything. The remnant fleet shattered against his defense like water against stone. Ship after ship fell. Captains who had dreamed of revenge for decades found themselves outmaneuvered, out-hot, out-fought. The god of war was earning his name. In 4 hours, 200 remnant ships were destroyed. The rest began to retreat, but Dohan did not smile. His eyes were on a different screen, one showing the planet below. "Sir," said General Vorath, who had stayed at his side through the battle, "we have won. The fleet is broken. The fleet was never their real weapon." Darwin's voice was ice. It was a distraction. He pointed at the screen. A small ship was descending toward the planet, toward the Talon estate. 50 soldiers, Dohan said. Assassins. The best they have left. Each one has trained for years to kill me. But I am here. His eyes darkened. So they will kill what I love instead. General Vorath went pale. Lady Yura, Dohan was already moving. General, the fleet is yours. Finish this. Where are you going? Dohan did not answer. He ran. The assault shuttle took him to the planet in 20 minutes. Every second felt like an hour. His mind was calculating. Distances, times, possibilities. The assassins would reach the estate before him. They would have 7 minutes with his wife. 7 minutes. A lifetime of killing in 7 minutes. He landed outside the estate walls. The guards were already dead. He stepped over their bodies and ran toward the main house. He found the first assassin in the garden. The man had trained for 15 years to avenge his people. He had dreamed of facing the god of war. He had practiced 1,000 different attacks. Dohan killed him in 2 seconds. The rest were inside the house. They had found Yura in the Great Hall, surrounded by servants who were trying to protect her. Bodies lay everywhere. The servants were brave, but they were not soldiers. Yura had her ceremonial knife. She was bleeding from a cut on her arm. But she was still standing, still fighting. When the door exploded inward, everyone turned. Dohan stood in the opening. For a moment, no one moved. The assassins looked at him, this small, quiet man in simple clothes, and saw their deaths looking back. Then they attacked. 50 killers, each one trained specifically to defeat him. They knew his techniques. They knew his patterns. They had studied every recording of every fight he had ever been in. It did not matter. Dohan moved through them like fire through paper. He did not think. He did not plan. He simply was. Every strike was perfect. Every movement was necessary. Nothing wasted. Nothing weak. Yura watched from behind an overturned table. She had seen him fight before on the space station. But this was different. This was what he truly was. It was beautiful. It was terrible. It was like watching a storm in human form. When it was over, Dohan stood alone among the bodies. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds. His clothes were torn. His breath came hard and fast. But he was alive. He looked at the security camera on the wall. He knew Yura could see him through it. He knew she was watching. His face held a question. After all this blood, after all this death, after seeing what I really am, can you still love me? Yura came out from behind the table. She walked through the bodies without looking down. She walked straight to her husband. She took his hand. Come inside, she said. I will make tea. The remnant fleet was destroyed. The survivors scattered into the darkness of space. The war, the last war, people would call it later, was over. 3 years passed. The estate had changed. The bloodstains were gone. The damaged walls were repaired. The garden was larger now, spreading behind the house in waves of color. Dohan stood in that garden, watching a small girl take her first steps. She had her mother's violet eyes and her father's dark hair. She was 3 years old, a hybrid, once thought impossible. The doctors had called her a miracle. Dohan called her his heart. Careful, Mina, he said softly as she wobbled on tiny feet. Slowly, slowly. Mina laughed and fell onto the grass. Dohan picked her up and held her close. Yura walked out from the house, carrying cups of tea. She sat beside her husband on the garden bench and watched their daughter try to catch a butterfly. General Vorath came by today, she said. He wanted to ask you about the new military academy. They want to name it after you. No. I told him you would say that. She smiled. He asked if they could at least put your picture in the entrance hall. Also no. I told him that too. They sat in comfortable silence. The sun was warm. The flowers were blooming. In the distance, Mayna had given up on butterflies and was now trying to eat dirt. Do you miss it? Yura asked. The war? Zoham watched his daughter. He thought about all the battles, all the blood, all the faces that still visited him in the night. Every war I fought, he said slowly. I was trying to find my way here. I just did not know it. Yura leaned against him. Was it worth it? All the pain? All the years? Doham looked at his wife, at his daughter, at the garden he had built with his own hands. Yes, he said. It was worth everything. Mina ran toward them, dirt on her face, laughing. Dohan caught her and lifted her high. She screamed with joy. In the halls of the Valori military, soldiers told stories of the god of war. They spoke of his battles and his victories. They spoke of his power and his fury. But those who knew him, those who had seen him in his garden, with his flowers and his family, knew a different truth. The god of war had found something stronger than war. He had found peace. He had found love. He had found home. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all.